Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. We're here reporting from Mobile World Congress 2015 in Barcelona in Spain, and it's getting very noisy. It's the evening of the second day. The parties are starting, but John Healy, here, my guest and old friend, and I are still working. John is General Manager of the Software Defined Networking Division at Intel. We will battle against Will.i.am or U2, whoever it is over there. We'll do what we can. We're going to have to speak up a bit, John.
Sure.
First question then, good to see you, I want to say, and thanks for coming in. Can you give us some updates on what's happening with NFV and the telco situation?
Yeah, well, I think if this show is any testimony to it, it's a significant amount of momentum. It's building from where it was last year. We've seen the ETSI program, the ETSI efforts move from sort of phase 1 into phase 2. We talked about that earlier in the year.
We did.
And really what I'm seeing, what the big buzz for me this year, and that's what's new, is the numbers of both proof of concepts that are being displayed here, but more importantly, the beginnings of the deployments. You know, actual implementations of the NFV technologies into live networks, albeit contained deployments, and in some cases features and specifications are narrowed and limited, but necessarily so to start to move the technology forward. That's the critical stage we've talked about before, to enable the maturing of these technologies to occur. That's kind of big takeaway for me, number one. Big takeaway number two then is the breadth and open and absorption of or acceptance of open source and open standards as the mechanisms by which these can come together. So several of the PoCs and demos that are running here are multi-vendor. Multiple vendors with VNFs, virtual network functions, multiple vendors on technology components, but all working together to show that sort of collaboration at an innovation level, but also a multi-vendor solution, which is really what the end customer, the service providers, are looking to have.
Okay, thank you. What about ETSI Phase 2?
Yeah, ETSI Phase 2 has kicked off. You know, we launched it in, so we're part of that launch in Phoenix earlier in the year.
Yeah.
It's now moving into that, you know, definitional stage and our specification stage and standardization and interoperability pieces of it, and it's continuing to gain momentum and continue on that path.
What about the role of open source in scaling, which is going to be very important going forward?
I think it's critically important. I think that realization has really started to sink in the industry, that open source creates that community of innovation, the ability to leverage and work with a large community of collaborators to ensure that you can innovate at a faster pace. In addition to that, it needs to go through the natural cycle of open source maturing and hardening and commercialization, so that the open source innovations that occur can be realized and fulfilled as deployments into the networks. That's what we're seeing happening through 2015, and we'll continue to see into 2016. But as an enabler of that faster pace of innovation, in the harnessing a community of collaborators and contributors, and ensuring that we get the greatest breadth of offerings and the choice in terms of the vendor community that a network administrator or operator can draw from, critically important. And I think it's very heartening to see how much momentum is being gained around those projects. Whether it's OpenNFV with an open source effort, the OpenStack activities that are continuing, the controller efforts like Open Daylight and several others, Open Virtual Switching, all of these open source pieces that are gathering momentum, attracting collaborators, attracting contributors, and now finding their way into the demonstrations, the PoCs, and ultimately the deployments.
What about NFV expanding into the enterprise then, John, away from the sort of traditional networks and into the enterprise?
Yeah.
Have you got any sort of new use cases and things you can tell us about?
We've seen some interesting concepts or implementations emerge in enterprise, particularly in areas like financial services. You're looking to see how they can greater utilize the assets that they deploy in the network and take advantage of NFV constructs. You're seeing many of the customers in that domain look to see how they can get greater efficiencies from the deployed product, but more importantly, in many cases, lower the time to introduction to new services. So in much the same kind of environment that set up the problem statement in telecom, in telco, we're seeing the same set of benefits start to accrue and apply themselves in the world of enterprise. Now what's interesting in that is that many of the same attributes that are required for the service are emerging there. High availability, ruggedized services, low latency, some are present themselves in enterprise, particularly for things like financial services, and then they're key for telco.
Yeah.
So as the NFV is maturing as a concept beyond its initial sort of domain, it's going to find a lot of utility and application in more and new markets.
What do you think are the best conditions for a successful deployment of NFV in an enterprise situation?
I think not unlike in telecommunications, it's ensuring you have the different building blocks, the different components available, the broad scale of multi-vendor support for the functions that you want to deploy on the network, and a scalable set of technologies on which you can build them. Like what we've been doing with our open network platform, creating a scalable set of reference platforms upon which these solutions can be built. And then the deployment can be commercialized through the vendors who are building and innovating on top of those reference blocks.
Okay. NFV services need orchestration, obviously. It's a sort of, it's there in the background, it's got to be orchestrated. What are the needs in that regard? What about the emerging options? What can be done in terms of ensuring that the orchestration of NFV allows the services and everything that's carried on them to go ahead properly?
Right. It's not at all unlike we'd see in classic orchestration of cloud services. Essentially, that's what we're trying to do. Bring a business model that has matured and evolved and matured in cloud and apply it to the network.
Right.
For network services, if you think of it as almost network services orchestration, if you have virtualized functions and you want to run those on the network across a ubiquitous set of standardized platforms, you need to be able to make the right kinds of decisions about where you deploy a particular function based on the attributes that are required from it, whether they're low latency or availability of specific accelerations for security or media management and so on and so forth. Making that kind of decision is a function of the orchestrator. So orchestration is evolving, OpenStack as example, evolving to take advantage of understanding the platform's attributes, so-called enhanced platform awareness, making filtering decisions about what each platform can support, and then targeting the deployment of the function toward the platform that has the best attributes for that function's requirements at any one time. That allows then the network administrator to manage the implementation of a service, taking best advantage of his different assets, whether it's highly dense use of a particular platform to get greater efficiency, or placement based on service requirements or features for the service that are going to take advantage of a particular platform's attributes. That's the network services orchestration piece.
Right.
That's developing and emerging. There are lots of activities there, whether it's within Neutron and OpenStack, and work with various different vendors in the industry that are looking to see how they can start to make those kinds of policy definition and then enforcement decisions. And we've been working on some of the building blocks to build up that stack, to enable our partners to build solutions on top of it, like Service Assurance Administrator, which is a middleware sort of a project. We have software that allows for the definition of policy and then the assignment of resources and policing of that assignment, so that you can have predictable behaviors as you deploy more and more virtual machines or more and more virtual functions on standard sets of server platforms.
It's noisy, as we can hear. Mobile world, of course, what do you expect? But looking forward, as far as we can look forward in this game, John, which isn't very far, things move so quickly. Looking forward, say, to a year, this time next year, Mobile World Congress 16, what do you think will have changed? I
think what will change will be more what continues to advance from where we were. If I look back over the last 2 years, we've gone from concept to kind of initial specification to proof of concept to trial, and then initial deployments. I think this time next year we'll have much more of the deployments occurring, the technology will have matured even further, and what I'm expecting we'll start to see is the creative, innovative new applications and services that can run and take advantage of this infrastructure. Because remember, we're building a platform for innovation at the service level.
Absolutely.
Really what we want to do is manage the cost base on one side and create much more opportunity for the implementation of new services and new revenues on the other. I think we'll start to see more of the services that are being built on top of this infrastructure that are generating very, very creative ways to create, to fulfill new revenue opportunities for the service providers. Well, I expect we'll see more of that in 2016.
Well, let's hope by then Mark Zuckerberg and his modern beat combo will have shut up and we can talk in peace and quiet, but well done for putting up with the noise, well done for getting through it, and of course, as usual, John Healy, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure, Martyn, as always.